Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Up Close on METV. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, Station Manager for Manatee Educational Television, and on this edition of Up Close, we're going to take a look at one of the most important assets in Manatee County, Port Manatee. Port Manatee is one of Florida's largest and fastest growing deep water seaports. Port Manatee moves more than 8 million tons of cargo each year. And Port Manatee also adds more than $2.3 billion, that's billion dollars annually, in regional economic impact and supports more than 24,000 jobs without the benefit of ad valorem taxes. Port Manatee is continuing its growth with new initiatives and new business and is poised to become even more of a valuable asset to our community, our region, and our state. Today, we're very privileged to have with us the leadership of Port Manatee. Joining us today is Carla, the Executive Director of Port Manatee. Ms. Bukaris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Carol Whitmore, County Commissioner, but also the Chairperson of Port Manatee, and Dave Sanford, the Deputy Executive Director of Port Manatee. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk about what I consider one of the greatest assets Manatee County has, and that's Port Manatee. First of all, Mr. Bukaris, could you tell us a little bit about the scope of what Port Manatee does?
Well, Port Manatee, as you said earlier, is a key economic driver for the region. What does that mean? That means that without, as you said, the benefit of taxation, it brings thousands of jobs to the community and has the ability to grow that exponentially by its size and scope, where the port can continue to grow almost unlimited and can continue to contribute to the Manatee County economy.
Well, let's talk a little bit basically about how Port Manatee is laid out. First of all, how many berths do you have at
We have 14 berths now.
And these are all deep water berths?
These are all deep water berths. In fact, we just went through our maintenance dredge. That's going to bring us up to 40 feet plus one, making us, the deepest water seaport on the west coast of Florida.
Well, one of the things that, when I was doing the research on this that I really thought was kind of inspiring is the amount and the types of cargo that come through Port Manatee. And tell us a little bit, or I'll defer to Mr. Sanford a little bit, the types of cargo that come through there are pretty extensive.
Well, we've worked very diligently over the last several years to diversify the cargo mix at the port. Historically, the port has served an agricultural community with fertilizers and fuels, etc. But we wanted a more stable cargo base that was not subject to one of those products going away and literally leaving you high and dry. So as a result of that, we're now handling fresh fruit. In fact, we have more cold storage warehouse square footage than anyone in Southwest Florida. We're bringing in metals at this point, aluminum and steel. Forest products are a growth area from Brazil. That would be finished lumber, plywood, pulp wood that's going up to Georgia Pacific. And of course, bulk continues to be an important part of our mix with the fertilizers and fuels. Fuels is a real growth area for us right now.
Well, and I'd like for you to take a moment, Mr. Bukaris, and all of you, to talk about how important is that, to develop, those type of services specifically for fuel. Natural gas?
Well, the port already handles natural gas. We have a pipeline underneath the port serving the gas needs of the entire region. In fact, FPL uses the gas coming in through Port Manatee to essentially light the community. But the diversification that Dave brought up is essential. We don't want to live by one trick or two or three. We are a major resource for the community, and we have the ability to handle, many more products than we handle today, and that's what we're going after.
Well, one of the things that, and that we've seen when we go programs about the port is kind of your emphasis or continued growth in containers. You have 2 large cranes now, is that correct?
That's correct.
And how important is that for container shipping?
Well, it's like having an airport without a runway. So it is critical, and in fact, more cranes, the better. And cranes are the critical component. In today's world, commodities move in containers. Mm-hmm. In the past, they used to be handled break bulk. Now they're handled in containers since the 1950s and 60s. And so having the cranes that we have at the port now are a key asset to our expansion.
Now, I want to defer to Ms. Whitmore, if I may, for a moment. It's got to be, as the chair of the Port Authority, it's got to be really rewarding to you to see that the initiatives and the growth of the port continue to find new sources of revenue. What is your take as that chair of the Port Authority on this diversification?
Well, thanks to Carlos's experience and his history down in South Florida, it's really helped the port a lot. As you know, during the downturn, Port Manatee mainly concentrated on break bulk. Mm-hmm. And Carlos has been able to reach out all over the world and get business. So it's really helped diversify us. You have to diversify, you have to reach out. It's not like you can expect business to come to you. It's very, very competitive. So we've, for this team here, we're very fortunate at Port Manatee is to have these guys on board with us.
Well, one of the things, and if you want to take a moment to comment, is that the Port Authority has been working with Del Monte for many, many years. It's one of the largest clients that you have. The Port Manatee is considered the 2nd largest facility for Del Monte nationwide. Is that correct?
That's correct, or maybe even tied with number 1.
Oh, that's even better.
Del Monte is focused, and certainly in Florida, on bringing in older produce, older fresh fruit, mm-hmm. ready for market. It's really a very interesting business because it goes right literally from the field to the shelf, through Port Manatee to your grocery store. And there's not a minute to waste. Every minute that causes a delay mm-hmm. is less value for the product, and you want fresh product, and the Port Manatee again serves the needs of Del Monte and the community to be supplied with fresh fruit any time of the year.
And one of the things, as Mr. Sanford mentioned, is that you have this extensive refrigerated space, but you also have extensive warehouse space at the port as well to accommodate the needs of not only Del Monte, but other shippers as well.
Yes, we have over 1 million square feet of warehouse space at the port, and in fact it's very unique space because we've got some clear span warehouses. In other words, there are no columns in the warehouses that allow total flexibility for our tenants to work a variety of products in those warehouses.
Well, as you, not only do you have the space, the already existing space, and the capability, to accommodate most shippers, you are poised right now for kind of looking for additional innovations to bring into Port Manatee. And one of those, which I think is very unique, is automotive portion of that, and that's Pesha?
That's correct.
And tell us a little bit about that and why that's so unique, and what a great attribute this would be for the port.
Well, part of the objectives of the port when I came on board and working with Chair Whitmore is that we needed to diversify. And one of the opportunities was auto handling, automobile distribution. And we targeted different companies. We signed an MOU with Pesha and worked the account, the 3 of us, mano a mano, until they signed the contract to distribute autos. And so as such, that kind of business is another differentiated revenue stream, but it's unique because the port never looked at this before. Now we have been for the last 1.5 years, and we are confident we're going to get this business. And why? Because it's going to create, again, hundreds of jobs, much like Air Products did across the street for welding. Automotive is another big opportunity. And so we are confident that we are going to be distributing cars from Port Manatee in the not-too-distant future.
Well, and I really think that's a great opportunity because you have a workforce, perhaps from Manatee Technical College or from the surrounding community, that can support the needs of this new shipper.
That's correct. In fact, Chair Whitmore has gone after really proactively looking at education, working with her contacts at the school board. And I think she'll want to talk about this, is what she has done, what we have done to go after making sure that not only do we have the commodity, but the trained workforce.
Which is important. And I'll defer to Commissioner Whitmore to talk about that, because the same thing was done when Air Products moved in, is that there was kind of an outreach to the community and educational components, for skilled workforce to do it. And teaming with Manatee Technical College now, that need was kind of met. Tell us a little bit about your efforts on that behalf.
Well, the team here meeting with companies from all over the world and encouraged them to come. We sat down one day and said, let's make sure we have the workforce. So we met with, we have a standing meeting now with Mr. Mills at the school board, as well as other people, MTI, Doug Wagner. And we've called it the Job Focus Team. And actually, we have all the colleges included. We are looking to see what the future is in the port business, because it's so international that we don't know what's coming in the future, as well as other industries in Manatee County. We have the EDC on this committee also. And what we're looking at trying to do is start the kids in middle school to let them know that there's opportunities, starting at middle school. Instead of waiting until they're in high school. So Mr. Mills, the school board, has been very receptive, and it all started because us at the port were encouraging businesses to come, and we want to be able to produce what we say we can. And so school board's working very well with Manatee County and the port.
And I would think, and I'd love to hear from Mr. Sanford and Mr. Bucharest, I would think one of the key components, one of the great assets that Port Manatee has is its location and its size and the surrounding area. Most ports, as people know, if they've been to Port Miami, it's very infilled. There's very little room for expansion or any kind of development there. Port Manatee does not have that issue. And why is that an important asset to Port Manatee? Mr. Sanford, we'll start with you, sir.
Prior to coming down to Bradenton, I worked for the American Association of Port Authorities, and that gave me an opportunity to see ports not only in the U.S., but throughout the Western Hemisphere. And this is a very, very unique set of assets that Port Manatee possesses. And in fact, it was very striking to me the first time that I went out to the port. Most cities grew up around ports, and ports have waterfront property. They're very, very constrained in being able to expand their footprints. In fact, in most large ports, they've contracted somewhat. At Port Manatee, we have the land asset, a tremendous asset. We have a very cooperative base of landowners. We have the connection through our governance structure with the county commissioners and county agencies. So, that assures growth. But even more than that, uncongested access to the interstate highway system, 1,100 acres within the fence, and still many developable tracts left on the port. We've got on-dock and on-port rail, which is coveted by most ports.
And I think that's a great asset to have.
Absolutely.
Didn't the port just get new engines
Yes.
for the
Two
for their
new
service?
environmentally friendly green locomotives, yes.
Well, access, as Mr. Bucharest says, getting that product to market, the access has got to be critical. Access to the interstate, access to rail. These are important things that shippers are looking
Yes.
at. And they're looking at that with the return on their investment of getting their product to market. So having that already in place is an important asset.
Yes, it really is.
I think, we kind of changed when I arrived at the port and working with the Port Authority and Chair Whitmore, is that we needed to look at things a little differently. And rather than be a, waterside real estate facility, we have turned it into what we call global supply chain solutions. Shippers, exporters, importers don't just look at a port as a real estate piece that's part of their supply chain. It is part of the supply chain. It is integrated in the supply chain. So rather than go to a customer and tell them, why don't you come and use Port Manatee, we identify their challenges, we identify their problems, and we offer them a comprehensive solution using Port Manatee from the factory door, wherever they are, to the customer shelves. And we stay with them throughout. When you problem solve for a customer like that, you get a very loyal following because essentially you're solving their problems.
And how critical is that in this, tight economic market, to work with a shipper who says, I have this product, I have to get it here at the lowest price and at the quickest time. Having to work with your staff, your talented staff that you have, to realize what those issues are and try to resolve them, kind of begins that customer for life philosophy.
Well, that's critical, and you're right. I think it is the key component. The other component is to let them know that the Port Authority is behind you. Often, port directors have gone into the wild thinking that the support of the port would be behind them, come to find out, really, that the Port Authority didn't see the same way. With Chair Whitmore, we've been able to work with Dave and the authority to really make sure the customers understand. It's just us thinking we can bring them in, but when you show up with the Port Authority chair, saying, yes, Carlos is on point and we can support this as a Port Authority, makes all the difference too.
And that's got to add like a lot of authority when you bring the chair of your Port Authority to meetings, whether it's in this region or in the state or internationally, to say, listen, we know what we want and we're here to support these efforts.
That's right.
That's got to be a valuable resource to have.
Oh, it's really critical because many ports have gone down the wrong path. Customers realize at some point that you have to report to a Port Authority. They just don't want an unpleasant surprise when it comes to the vote supporting or not supporting their project. If you have pre-wired, essentially, the support of the chair. Mind you, they can't talk to each other. Okay, that goes a long way towards getting the credibility with the rest of the board we need.
But still, to have that kind of insight from your chair, to go to meetings, to sit in on meetings, it's got to be very rewarding for you, Ms. Whitmore, to have that kind of intimate inclusion from the very beginning, as Mr. Bucaris and Mr. Sanford are out there developing contacts.
Carlos and the team has invited me to meet with very big heavy hitters, and I didn't hesitate. I mean, to me, that's my job, is to help get business to Port Manatee. And Carlos has been in the port business 23 years at another port south of here, and in the marketing. And he had told me, and I hear it from the companies that we meet with, that in 23 years he had never had a port chair ever go to any sales call with him. But I have been received by our potential business partners with the most positive feedback. John Pasha emails me directly, calls me directly. Where the staff have to go through the channels, I can call the president of the company. Exactly. So, and I'm grateful for the Manatee County Commission for keeping me as the chair for my third year, because it takes a while to get these deals solidified and get these relationships built. And with the help of these guys and then my relationships also, it was good, and I'm very happy that the board decided to keep me on another year so that we can get the deal with Pasha and the other companies that we're working on.
And for the sake of clarity, we're just, all Manatee County commissioners act also as the board of the Port Authority and sit in as members of the Port Authority in that capacity.
Yes, they do. So. And it's all in the sunshine. So what Carlos is very good at is when we do meet with these high companies that we really want to bring and we can't really make it public, Carlos is very good at educating the commissioners one-on-one so that they aren't surprised when they do come before the board. He will let them know that we've met, we've gone out to dinner with them. Our favorite place is out on Anna Maria Island at the Sandbar, because we have people from all over the world that can actually sit on the sand and have dinner. And to me, that's always been my clench to get the sale going forward.
That's the deal
That's the deal
maker,
breaker.
Well, I'd like to take a moment, and Ms. Whitmore has referred to this, and you, Mr. Vaqueros, you've made a tremendous impact in kind of reach out nationally and internationally. But I'd like to take a few moments to talk about those international things. You've recently returned from Spain, where you've done, for the lack of a better word, a trade mission to sing the praises of Port Manatee. When you're going to Spain or to other countries, what is that kind of effort that you're putting forth to try to secure business? How do you develop that contacts?
Well, we develop the contacts through a variety of sources, but really, rather than wait for someone to find us, being proactive and having a Manatee County tailored trade mission is critical. We have a lot of other counties in the state, and going out there and putting the Manatee flag on the ground, saying we are interested in doing business with you and we're here, makes a really big impression. We have, in fact, a planned return trip from these companies in Europe that are interested in expanding here. The euro now has been heavily devalued, so their commodities become even more attractive for import and also potential re-exports to Cuba. So putting Manatee on the map is essential. And as you know, we even bill ourselves as Orlando's port. Because again, when we go to these countries, it's hard for them to identify exactly even where Tampa Bay is. They know Miami, they know Orlando.
Right.
Manatee is a little bit more of a challenge. So we've been able to do a number of things, such as we're heavily involved in going down to Miami for meetings. As Chair Whitmore said, we go where the money is. So the money is there, and in foreign missions, because otherwise some of these companies will never leave Miami, and they'll cut them off at the pass while we tell them we're just outside. It's just a few miles up 75.
Well, one of the things I would suggest to you, too, is not only your background, but your mastery of language to be able to communicate with those individuals in Spain or in South America in their native tongue gives them that kind of sense of we're all in this together. And I would suggest that's a great benefit that you bring to that position. So.
Well, even in the original search papers, the county and the Port Authority wanted 3 languages. Somebody bilingual. Yeah, and you're right. They wanted Spanish, French, or Portuguese, and we got all 3.
You got all 3 with
and no extra charge. We threw it in there, but it is critical. You're right, because our customers are really global. We have very few domestic-based customers. Our 2 largest stevedores are from Canada, and we speak to them in French quite often. Why? Because it lowers the level of anxiety sometimes when you can communicate in their first language. But that was really an objective of the Port Authority. And let's not get someone with just 1. If we can get the same price for 3, we'll take it. So.
And having heard you speak before, one of the key things that you've mentioned in the past is this is an international business. You're dealing with companies and things all over the world. You want to have that kind of international flavor to what Port Manatee brings. And I must say, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about your presence in Miami, because Miami is that central port to Central and South America. And having a presence there has got to be critical to convincing people that perhaps maybe you should take a look at this.
Oh, that's right. I think Port of Miami, Port Everglades have been very successful during the last 20, 30 years. There's not an acre left at either port, and as a result, really the opportunities are that we now have space to take business that overflows Miami that otherwise would go to other states. We're not in the business of taking business from any other port. We're in the business of growing the pie.
Right. And I think with examples like Air Products, that's part of that whole philosophy is to widen the availability of services and products that can come into Port Manatee, and that's a very wise decision. Yes, Ms. Whitmore.
Carlos did a very smart thing. He knows a lot of the companies from Miami. We actually have a telephone line in Miami, a 305 area code, that transfers right to Port Manatee. But what he did is he's contacted these people throughout the world and that use Miami and other ports in South Florida, and he goes, call them today and see if you can get a berth. And a few have actually taken him up on it. They've called back and said, Carlos, you're right. I can't add any more business than I have today.
It's pretty impressive to be
it
able
is.
to do that, to have that initiative and that kind of result-driven idea, scope of things to do on. If I may, I just want to go back a little bit, and I want to defer to Mr. Sanford, if I may. When we're talking about the size of the port, and the number of berths, and the number of cubic feet of storage up there, pretty much any type of cargo would be accepted at Port Manatee. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. And again, it's part of the diversification strategy. And we certainly want products that fit our infrastructure mix, but because of the nature of the warehouses that we have out there and the bulk storage facilities, we're able to accommodate just about any product that Carlos rounds up when he's abroad.
In fact, you might want to tell them about the corn.
Oh,
I mean, talking about products, right?
Yeah, we've had everything from bulk grains, not in a bag, but loose on the ground. We can accommodate that.
Most everything.
Yes.
But one of the things, and going back to the container shipment, and please correct me because you're the expert on this, is that the larger ships now, and that carry hundreds and thousands perhaps of container ships, can those be accommodated at Port Manatee?
Well, we cannot handle, obviously, very few ports can, what we call now the super ships. They carry about 18,000 containers. Mind you, that a ship normally carries 3,000 or 4,000. There are ships now dedicated to the Pacific trade, or from the Pacific or the Far East to Europe. They're the largest. We don't have like 60 feet of draft.
And that would need
however, having said that, many ports have been able to reach volumes of 1 million containers or more with our draft. So we, while we are looking, and Dave Sanford has made efforts for us to be able to expand the port from a draft perspective, we can grow the port exponentially without having to go beyond our 41 feet now.
That's a really innovative initiative to be looking at, to be able to do that. That would expand the capabilities of port many times over.
Yes. Well, we really had focused in two areas. One is in the interim, we want to restore the draft that we originally were authorized by the U.S. Congress, and that's 40 feet. And we were able to secure funding, working with our congressional delegation and with the support of the Commission, to get our maintenance dredging underway in concert with dredging the ship channel, so that
Which is kind of has to go hand in hand.
Exactly. So we were able to time the funding and the schedules optimally for that. The second part of that, as Carlos mentioned, is deepening the channel. And we believe, working with the Corps of Engineers Jacksonville District and with their headquarters staff, that it's very possible to deepen that channel to 43 to 45 feet.
Wow.
And that would allow us, with tide, with 2 feet of tide and the mechanics of the dredging process where you get a little additional depth for advanced maintenance, we could probably accommodate just about any of the container ship calls coming out of Panama or out of the transshipment hubs, as Carlos suggested. 8,000 to 9,000 TEU ships probably are going to be about the max that you see on the Gulf and the East Coast of the U.S., and we'll get them into Port Manatee.
And I think that's a really important kind of vision to have, to be able to do that, because one thing that the port is always doing is looking for those new ways, a new strategic vision to be part of expanding growth. And I think that's a key thing that Mr. Bucharest, you've talked about this on many occasions about expansion and being able to bring more to the port. And this would be a valuable asset.
That's correct. It's really, you can't have a 747 fully loaded landing on a 4,000-foot runway. We now have what I would call a 7,000-foot runway. We could get maybe to 8,000 or 9,000, but we have enough now to bring in large container ships prior to any further dredging, and we're going to go right after those customers that can bring us in those new containers, those new businesses, and we're poised for it, and we're in the right location as well.
Well, one of the things too that's still a benefit is your proximity to transportation, both from your rail point of view and from the interstate point of view. Now, one of the things that, and I'll defer to Commissioner Whitmore in there, is the key thing that's been brought up is a connector road for Port Manatee. What's the status of that, and how important would that be to Port Manatee?
Right now it's on hold. If we went full throttle and tried to get the state to approve this, we probably would get denied because the counts aren't there yet. We have, as a county, throughout the years, reserved right away, so that if we do decide, or the state decides that that's the route we'll take. But actually, Chair of the County Commission, Betsy Manek, has met with the landowners recently and reported to the County Commission that they are looking at other alternatives too. We do realize that we do need to, when we get the business, we are going to need to be able to sell it and be able to get our trucks on the interstate faster. Right now, we are looking at other options, though. But that is that is an option that we will be using too. And we have the reserve right away. But the state tells us hold off a little bit.
But that might be like in a 3-year or a 5-year plan, to help develop that in some capacity.
Correct. And again, with this port business, he may go somewhere out throughout the world and get us a customer, and we may need it like in a year. Mm-hmm. So, and the state is aware of that. And the governor, as you know, is very supportive of ports. Our legislators are in leadership positions now. They're very supportive of Port Manatee. And so if something like that happens, I can trust the state that I think that they would really help us get it moving faster.
And to move forward.
Correct, a connector.
That's right. And if you look at what the state spent on the Port of Miami tunnel, I can assure you 20 years ago, they didn't think they were going to spend $1 billion. This is a low-cost solution to not having to put in a bridge, an overpass, or a tunnel. Mm-hmm. We can do it now real cheap, real cost-effective, and not have to spend millions of dollars, $1 billion for the Port of Miami tunnel, that is only maybe less than a mile. So, it's pretty expensive, and I think had Miami realized that's what they're going to spend, they would have done the connector road too.
Now, did the Port of Miami tunnel, let me just ask you, is it done? Is it complete now? Is that operational?
It's done and open. Mm-hmm. It's done and open. There's limitations, of course, on the tunnel, but I think the jury's still out as to how effective it is, because there's a bridge too leading to the port, and it's been a great infrastructure investment, but we want to avoid having to spend $1 billion to do that.
And you have the room. You have the room out there already to put in a connector road. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Mr. Bucharest, if you could, on the Florida International Gateway Improvement, or what you call FIG, and tell us what that is and how important that is to the development of the port.
Well, the Florida International Gateway is a designated facility that encompasses thousands of acres. The idea is that we have focus such as Air Products. Air Products is the first official company, major Fortune 200 company, to site on the Florida International Gateway. It's really, if you would, an expansion that no other port has, like Chair Whitmore said. We are not surrounded by a city. We can do this cost effectively and expand it all the way out to 75 and beyond. And we have worked with the Port Authority and the landowners and Commissioner Chair Benek now to make sure that they identify their land that they want to be able to contribute towards future air products. Let me give you an idea today. The last 6 acres available of land at Port Everglades just sold for $6 million. $1 million per acre. We can do a little bit better than that and still make money.
Well, and that's important for development too. And then the county also has other incentives for businesses in and around that area. Isn't that true, Commissioner Whitmore?
Yes, we have the fast track through our economic department, and also we work with the EDC. But Air Products receive their permitting and their permitting in 54 days.
That's amazing.
And every time we bring this up, wherever we go, the customers and the public are totally shocked because that doesn't happen in the real world. So the county that's a priority for us, is to get redevelopment in that area. As you know, that's also a TIF area. And the more business we bring there, the more income to the county. But mainly, and again, it's to really keep our citizens in that area educated on how important it is, and hopefully that we can encourage them to build port-related businesses or sell to port-related businesses, because I've heard from many people, if you see a Publix go in there, forget it. We're not going to get port-related business. So we're really keeping our landowners close to the chest, keeping them informed on what we're doing. If we see a potential customer, Carlos and also our EDC is informing them, letting them talk, keeping them informed about possibly what we can do transportation-wise for improving the roads. So hopefully this will happen. And again, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. You may see something in 3 to 5 years.
And that's part of a larger strategic plan, that Mr. Bucaris and Mr. Sanford and the Port Authority look at and see, how can we, measure things in a 3-year and a 5-year and a longer, maybe perhaps even a 10-year strategic plan. But I'd like to take a moment, if I could, and to hear, because having heard Mr. Bucaris speak before, I know that he's very knowledgeable about this, but on an international business. We hear about the Panama Canal, and all the news recently is about the normalization of trade with Cuba. So there's a lot of talk about that. Port Manatee is keeping an eye on all of these developments and seeing how best that you can include those developments in your plans. So, Ms. Bucaris, talk to us a little bit about Panama and about Cuba and why you think those may be valuable to the port's development.
Well, I think they're more than valuable, they're strategic. When you look at the geopolitical Caribbean basin, you see what's happening in Cuba, the Panama Canal expansion. It all bodes well for great opportunities. The port not only needs to just see what happens, but we're trying to make things happen. We're not waiting for things to settle down to be able to capitalize on opportunities. We are going to be involved in opportunities with Cuba once relations, become, when and if they become, let's say, allowed. And the Panama Canal is, be ready to go. It's a little bit behind schedule by about 2 years. They had some problems. That's going to be expected of a project of that size. But Cuba really has the wherewithal to become Cuba's China. Why? Because they need everything. We are the closest port to Mariel. We envision being Cuba's pantry in Port Manatee. Whatever they need, we can supply. We can be the 24-hour Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, where they just call up and we ship them. We can be the Amazon, as you know, Amazon's up the road, the Amazon for Cuba. Pick and pack, ship it tonight. We might even use drones to get over there.
Maybe not, but
maybe not.
But in any event, and it will happen. The progress towards normalization is happening, and trade missions are being opened up. And do you envision going to Cuba to talk to some of the authorities there to see how best Port Manatee can meet their needs?
Well, we envision, I think, going to Cuba. But not to talk to the current government.
Correct.
But to talk to some of the businesses in Cuba and to lay some of the groundwork that needs to be done. as you could tell, Cuba could open any time. We weren't expecting this new development, and we realized we're not going to get given a lot of time when Cuba opens. It could happen overnight. It could happen in 2 years. But certainly the latest development shows us that we have to be ready to be able to move on Cuba when the time comes.
And I would also suggest that having a man of your background and experience, being there, meeting with businessmen and leaders, and both, from the Cuban side as well as the American side, would help facilitate that process. We're going to winding down a little bit, and I want to kind of go around the table and get some more insight into the port. What would you say, Mr. Sanford, that people don't realize that Port Manatee accomplishes each and every year?
Well, as I go out and speak in the community, I'm always amazed that they can't put their finger on the map as to exactly where we're located. They're kind of familiar with us. But I think the main surprise is that just a few miles up the coast, say from Bradenton, you have a major U.S. deepwater seaport. And in fact, we started looking recently at all the places on the globe that we touch, and developing a new slide for that for our presentation. And the arrows go all over the world.
Pretty impressive.
And that's an eye-opener for a lot of people in Manatee County, that you really, truly have a global gateway at Port Manatee.
Ms. Whitmore, what would you say?
I think the biggest thing that I have to probably inform the public almost every time is that Port Manatee does not rely on property taxes at all. Yeah. We charge the customers, and in doing that, this is a whole nother world than government. This is a business world, and we have to make business decisions faster, usually sooner rather than later. And so I think that's the biggest thing, that is trying to educate the citizens regionally. Remember, we are Naples port. We are almost to Orlando's port. We're across the state's port. To educate them that we run and operate with fees that we charge our customers and not property taxes.
Which is an amazing thing, because you're generating not only the revenue, to make the port do it, but you're also putting that revenue into savings and earnings for additional expansion or whatever the port decides it might need.
Correct. And on that point also, our port north of us in Tampa, they assess their citizens probably 10 to 15 million a year on property taxes. So that model, we are a little bit different. And actually, when we educate our state legislators throughout the state, because not all the ports are like this, they're surprised, and they're actually pleasantly
quite pleased.
Surprised. Yes,
I imagine
exactly.
they're quite pleased
Yeah.
that no taxes.
Well, I think like the old commercial, we make money the old-fashioned way.
Yeah,
We don't
good.
tax, we earn it. And I think that
That's good.
the key component, in addition to what Chair Whitmore just said, that it's about job creation. And I don't think the citizens or the residents of Manatee County would care how high I can put a container, or I can stack a container, how many bananas we brought in. But if we can tell them how many jobs we created, how many homes were purchased with those jobs, how many additional opportunities we created, that's the key. We're not looking just to make money for the port and leave the community behind. The chair, the board is focused on no ad valorem taxes and job development, and that's a key mandate, probably higher than just about job creation is key.
Well, and I would also suggest that aside from direct jobs that are benefit for the port, there are many, many indirect jobs that the port is creating. Commissioner Whitmore talked about the educational component of it, but there's also suppliers and service providers that are also out there that the port, in some way, directly or indirectly, is nurturing.
That's right. Jobs, ports are great job generators, and there's direct jobs, indirect jobs, associated jobs, and it really goes down, to us, 24,000 jobs because of the economic impact, the ripple effect. we have some expansions now going at the port. Well, all the capital goods that are purchased, all the construction workers.
Exactly.
I mean, not only are we creating jobs with the actual project, but the construction of that project requires a lot of jobs too.
And that's a key component, with the port. Every time I've heard Ms. Whitmore talk about the growth and the vision of the port, is the emphasis is always that we're supplying people with jobs. And as you pointed out, those are people going to school, kids going to school, people buying homes, people buying automobiles, and contributing back to the community at large. Now we're kind of winding down. I just want to spend a couple of minutes on a couple of things. Every time people talk about the port, whether it's at a presentation that you do, it always comes up, well, what are you doing about the cruise business? So, and that's always a question that comes up. And tell us a little bit about your take on cruise business at Port Manatee.
Well, cruise business is another diversification opportunity. My background has been, a lot of cruise at Port Everglades, Miami. So we know how to get cruise here. What we need to weigh are the benefits and let's say the downside of cruises. But I think a small cruise line, also a passenger ferry to Cuba, like we want to have, or maybe perhaps a cruise to nowhere, where people get an idea of what it is to cruise. So before they buy a long cruise, they get to sample the cruise. Are all opportunities because you're talking about more jobs for that. So cruising, I think, is certainly within our radar screen. It is an opportunity, and I think it's going to be realized because we have the infrastructure, the facilities, I think, and the interest to get back into cruising.
Well, we'll follow up on that because you do have a bit of the infrastructure there. You have the roads, you have the security, you have all of those things that if indeed you wanted to move forward with a cruise possibility, a lot of that is already in place. So I want to first of all thank all of you for participating. I've found this very rewarding for not only this community to know about Port Manatee, but they have the opportunity to hear what this leadership for Port Manatee are thinking. So I'm going to go around the table real quick, and we'll start with you, Mr. Sanford. What do you see for the next 5 to 10 years for Port Manatee?
Well, I see continued growth, and certainly the diversification strategy is paying off. And I see an emphasis inside the gate on essentially rebuilding our infrastructure. We're very focused on rehabilitating our 40 to 50-year-old berths. And then outside the gate, certainly a focus on continuing to promote and encourage the development of the properties in the gateway towards maritime uses.
Which I think would be really critical because you have quite a bit of land surrounding the port that businesses and industries can look to see for that future development.
Yeah, an interesting point about that, though, is that as Carlos is out internationally marketing the port, and Chair Whitmore is meeting with potential customers with us, we're marketing for the county. If that development occurs outside the port gate and it benefits the county, then we've accomplished our mission.
Absolutely.
As Carlos said, our mission is economic development and job creations. We just happen to be a seaport. That's our medium, but our focus is otherwise.
That's very well said, sir. The Commissioner Whitmore, you've been involved with as the chair now, setting policy, looking at the strategic vision. What do you see for the next 5, the big picture for Port Manatee?
I think continued awareness of Port Manatee internationally, throughout the United States and actually in Florida also. I think with the team that we have here, with Dave Sanford's connections in Washington, D.C., with the Corps, which is where he came from originally, and Carlos's international background. You speak 5 languages, correct? 4 languages.
As of this taping, he speaks 4. So
yes, exactly.
We'll update you.
But I just think with this team together and our aggressiveness to go out and get business, I think our big mission will be mainly to get the message out internationally and throughout the United States regarding Port Manatee, that this is a port that you can come tomorrow. We've gone to customers and we've said, you come tomorrow, within a week, we can have you set up. And Patia knows that, other companies, they're just waiting for it to trigger in Mexico to bring the auto industry via ship. So it's all starting to come into place, and thanks to our team here, our marketing team that we have that goes out throughout the United States. He also has another leg that Carlos does the international. We have someone else, Maddie, a piece that does the United States. So, you know, that is going to bring it all together, I think.
Well, Mr. Bakaris, I'm going to defer to you for the last word on this. But I must say that in the few short years that you've been here, that Port Manatee has seen kind of this growth and kind of strategic vision begin to take place. And one of the key things of that is to look beyond its borders, look beyond that immediacy to opportunities in South America or Spain or wherever they may be. And you really have brought that to kind of the forefront for Port Manatee because it is an international economy. Shipping is an international business. But you've also kind of brought kind of a new innovative and new initiatives that I think are, that this community, this region, the state, should be most appreciative of. So what do you see in the next 4 to 5 years, aside from learning additional languages?
Right.
One more.
Chinese, I think, would be one of the key things.
Well, I think you're going to have a port that has now consolidated its opportunities with really jumping on to really exponential growth. We're laying down the groundwork. We have the foundation done. Now we're thinking what kind of house we want here. And we're making it a big house, so all of Manatee can fit into it. Opportunities abound. And really where I think the citizens, voters of Manatee County, the Port Authority can be very, very proud that they really nurtured the port to where the port in 5 years can be at, and even beyond that, I think 10 and even 20 years. I think you're not going to recognize the port in 20 years, and in 5 years, I think you'll see the vision of where the port is going to, and I think the residents of Manatee County will be very, very proud.
Well, I think with the leadership of people like Mr. Sanford and Commissioner Whitmore and of course yourself, that vision can certainly come to pass. And you're to be congratulated not only for your efforts, but also having that vision of seeing what kind of innovation and what kind of initiatives that you can undertake to make Port Manatee continue to be that right turn on Tampa Bay. Mr. Bakaris, thank you very much for doing this. Commissioner Whitmore, Mr. Sanford, thank you very much. I found this very, very informative for our community to talk about one of the most valuable assets that Manatee County has, and that's Port Manatee. And thank you for joining us on this special edition of Up Close on METV. For additional information about the port, go to the website and find out how Port Manatee continues to benefit our community. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on Up Close on METV. Can we just kind of sit here and talk for a minute?